Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Annabeth, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I'm so glad you all are here. So today I have another episode for you in my Adventures with a Sock Machine series, I guess, and what we're going to be talking about today is a little experiment I did. So if you follow me over on Instagram, and watch my stories and stuff, you probably know that last week I did a little bit of an experiment with my sock machine and I created something totally new, at least totally new to me. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So before I show you what I made, this is a birthday gift for my brother. And I needed to find an alternative to cranked socks for him because he does not like super warm socks. He doesn't really like wool socks because he's kind of the opposite of me, as all siblings are, I mean, honestly. But he's like a human furnace. He is one of those people who will be out in 10 degree weather with a t-shirt and shorts on and whatever. Meanwhile, I will use a blanket in the middle of summer. Beside the point. I had to find an alternative because he doesn't really like super warm socks. He doesn't like his feet to get warm, whatever. So I'm going to show you what I made him. Joey, if for some reason this was the video you chose to start watching my YouTube videos with, don't. And come back after you've opened your birthday present. Okay, so here's what I made. So this is a can koozie. So here I still have the can on my desk that I was using to test this. Here's what it looks like on a can. There's the bottom. So yeah, pretty straightforward blue little koozie. If you're not familiar with can koozies, this is what they normally look like. And then some people call them cozies, some people call them koozies. I don't know what the divide there is, honestly, but this is the one I used to build this one from and figure out how I was going to do that. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. I have enough yarn on this cone from what I originally made this one in, and I should be able to have enough to show you how I did this, show the little process. It's not going to be a full crank along, but I'm gonna do my best to explain what I did in case somebody else wants to try and make this in the future and use this video as a resource. I'm not the most well-versed in sock machine terminology yet. I'm still learning, but again, I'll do my best to explain what I did. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it and I will show you how I made this can koozie. Okay, so first things first, before we get to the actual cranking, let me tell you a little bit of the thought process that went behind this. So, as I showed you before, this was the koozie that I was kind of looking at and trying to figure out, I guess the engineering of, before I made one. So, as you can see, it's basically a tube of foam, but then the bottom was the interesting part to me. So, the bottom, it folds flat, and then it, when you open it up and when you put a can in or whatever, hang on, struggling here. When you put a can in, it's still flat, so it could still rest on a flat surface. So that was the main design feature I wanted to recreate. I wanted to have that flat kind of foldable bottom, and I think I did an okay job. So let me show you the notes that I made. I have 4 notebooks on my desk right now. So I started with tracing the koozie, the foam one, and then I took measurements of its height, so the height of the main body and the height of the bottom, the width of the bottom at its narrowest point, and then the width of the koozie itself, the main section of it. And then I also took notes on how thick the foam was. The foam was about 3/8 of an inch thick. Is that right? Why does that feel weird? Oh, that's centimeters. No, it's not 3/8, it's 3/16. Oh well. It still worked out. Anyway, I took notes of like the thickness of the foam, the actual can circumference as well, and then I kind of brainstormed ideas for how I would do the toe. So with cranked socks, or not the toe, the bottom of the koozie. I'm getting ahead of myself. With cranked socks, for the heels and the toes, what you do is you basically work a short row heel and toe. So you work, you know, halfway out on one half of the needles. You work about halfway out, working short rows using less and less needles each time, and then you work your way back out to the full half of the needles you were originally using, adding in a needle on every row. And the same thing goes for the toe. So I took inspiration from that because I was pretty comfortable with that process. But the thing is, like with the heel, for example, like it sticks out quite a bit. It doesn't lay flat because of that, the short rows and then the lengthening rows. So I decided to do a bit of a variation, and I'll explain this more when we get to actual cranking. Oh my god, these socks have so much dog hair on them. But basically what I did is I cut out the first section of the heel. So I completely cut out the part where the rows are getting shorter and shorter, and I just worked the second half of the heel. So I started at the target, like the center number of needles, like 9 or 10 needles, whatever it is for the cylinder, and I just worked the lengthening rows portion. So I did that on one side, and then I flipped my cylinder around, kind of, I'll show you what I mean later, and worked the same thing from the other side and ended up seaming them in the middle. So you can kind of see where the seam is, where I just grafted the middle together. And it worked pretty well. I'm sure I could have, like, now that I've had this in my brain for like a week now, has it been a full week? I don't even know. I probably could have figured out a way to, like, when I got to this part where I was about to do the bottom, I probably could have figured out a way where I actually, like, bound off these stitches on either side so that I could then actually have a flap that folds flat and then becomes the bottom, but honestly, I think it still worked out just fine. Like, you actually get kind of you can't see it very well here, you'll be able to see it when I'm cranking the next one, but we almost get a little bit of like a little eyelet detail, which I really like. So yeah, that was a bit of the design process that went into that, and then once I got into the actual cranking, I of course had to swatch. So I swatched first with the 60 needle cylinder because that's what was originally just in my machine at the time, and it was a little bit too big. It didn't quite have the negative ease that I wanted in order to fit around the can. So then I switched to the 54 needle cylinder. So some of the stats on the swatch that I made for the 54 needle cylinder, I ended up with a 3.625 inch or 9.2 centimeter width, which gave a pretty good snug fit. Like, I put the can inside of the swatch tube and it had a pretty nicely snug fit that I thought it would work. And the yarn that I was using, I don't even tell you what yarn I used. This is Dream in Color yarn. They're smooshy sock base, and this color is Peacock Shadow. Really nice semi-solid dark blue. It is a bit of a thicker sock yarn, so then the fabric that it made was pretty dense. It didn't have a ton of vertical stretch, so that worked really well for the koozie too. So the swatch on the 54 needle cylinder ended up being exactly what I needed, and then I was able to get cranking. So that is what we will do now. I'm going to go ahead and change the camera focus so it's focusing more on my machine, and I'll show you what I did. I'll make another koozie on camera with you guys. Let's hope nothing goes wrong, as things tend to happen when I record myself cranking things. Yeah, let's get into it then.
Hey buddy, what you doing?
You being a good boy? Yeah? Oh, what a good boy. Alright, you gotta get out of my way, buddy. I gotta start cranking. Oh, your friends are barking. You should go see what they're saying. Okay. Alright, so first things first, we got to get set up. Let me go ahead and turn my row counter on, reset it, even though I don't really need it just yet. And first thing we have to do is we have to cast on. So I'm going to go ahead and, actually let me make sure I spray some of this stuff first. Alrighty, there we go. Machine is lubricated. So first thing is going to have to be to cast on, and since this is the 54 needle cylinder, I don't have a setup bonnet for it just yet. So I do have this piece of kind of ugly looking scrap knitting that I used before. So yeah, we're just gonna cast on with this guy again. So how I do that is I take the scrap knitting that I have and my loom tool, and I literally just put it in the center. And I like to start at my main mark. I don't think you technically have to when casting on, but I tend to, just to keep everything even, nice and even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this knitting, and I'm literally just grabbing loops from the wrong side of my knitting and placing it on, and then we only have to put loops on every other needle, so I only have to grab for half the needles. Okay, so I've put as many loops as possible, or I've put loops on every other needle as far as I can go, because these ones are still under the cam system. So now I'm going to crank to my main mark being right at the break in the yarn feeder. So now the first needle that I put a loop on, just realized I'm probably blocking that with my hand. The first needle that I put a loop on is now the next needle that'll grab some yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and fill these needles over here real quick. Okay, so I have put as many loops as I can on, so now I need to put in some scrap yarn to separate my setup from my actual work. I'm going to go ahead and thread that through my machine. Okay, got that. And then I also need to take my cable lock and close up the bottom of my setup here. Try to put that up as far as possible. There we go. And then I have my medium weight. Just gonna put that right in the center. And we start cranking. Okay, so I've gone far enough that now I can take the weight out quickly and fill the rest of these needles with loops. So far all of them are looking pretty good for casting on with the yarn over here. There we go. Make sure my weight is still pretty centered. Okay, and then I'm going to crank about 10 rows of scrap yarn. What in the world? Oh. Well, there we go. I hit the tail end of my scrap yarn. Perfect. Okay, so now I remove the scrap yarn, and I have to add in a ravel cord so that it's super easy to take my work off of the scrap yarn when I'm done. So how I do that, got the scrap yarn in the center, got the ravel cord. Oops, did I grab two? No, that's one. All right. And this is just, I think, nylon thread. But it, of course, doesn't like grip anything, so that's why it makes it super easy to remove at the end. And I'm just going to take a weighted clip and clip those two together. Okay, so now I just need to crank one more row for the ravel cord. There we go. And now I repeat the process that I just did for the scrap yarn and ravel cord, but with the ravel cord and my main yarn. So again, this is Dream in Color Smooshy Sock in Peacock Shadow. You can really see the nice semi-solid blue there. And this time I want to make sure I thread the yarn under the break that's in my yarn mast, because I will need to use the heel spring at the end. Oh, I didn't pull that through yet. I don't need much of a tail on this end because I'm doing a hung hem, so that'll create a pocket to sew the end into. So you really don't need much of a tail. Actually, let me go ahead and take this guy out real quick. Help me maintain my ends. Tame my ends, really. Ooh, careful, careful. There we go. Okay. Alright. Those stitches that try to jump off back down. There we go. Alright, so we have the ravel cord, we have the main yarn added. I'm going to go ahead and reset my row counter. And I had a really small hung hem on this one. This was about 12 rows, so we're going to go ahead and crank 12 rows now. Okay, well my camera tried to jump off my desk when I started it recording again. So anyway, we're cranking 12 rows. Oops. That one didn't want to knit. There we go. Are you kidding me? What did I say? Every time I try to record something, something wants to go wrong. Ridiculous. No more issues from you. Come on, man. Are you kidding me? Seriously? Are you gonna be nice now? You gonna stop being camera shy or something? Come on. Oh, that was almost bad. Alright, well, we made it to the end of the 12 rows. I've stopped with my main mark at around, I don't know, 5 o'clock. So now we're going to do a hung hem. So if you've made socks on sock machine before, you probably know how to do this already. It will be a bit of a smaller hung hem than like one for socks, but it's still the same process. So I have my loom tool, and I'm going to go ahead and grab all the loops that are between the two bumps of ravel cord and place those on the corresponding needles, and do that all the way around. Okay, so now that I have hung all the hem stitches, I just have to make sure all of them knit correctly, and then we can get into the body. Okay, all double stitches have been knit. I'm going to reset my row counter and now crank 30 rows for the body. I'm going to move my weight up as well. Because this is a thicker yarn, I've found it tends to need the weight a little bit closer to the needles in order to knit properly. I think that was the issue I was having earlier. Because like as the weight gets further and further down the tube, like the elasticity of the yarn, I think, has an effect on how much tension the weight actually provides. So anyway, besides that, 30 rows now, and we're going to stop when the main mark, once it hits 30, when the main mark is around like 4 or 5 o'clock. Oh, getting so high again. Why are you guys being assholes today? Alright, I'm giving up with the medium weight. I don't know why. It worked fine the other day with the medium weight, but alright, let's keep going. So now we've reached the end of that section of yarn that was on the cone, so I just need to join in the next section. Why does this section of yarn seem to be cranking a lot easier than the last one? Whatever. Okay, so now we've reached the point where we would normally be lifting half of the needles. Let me just trim these ends really quick because I wove in as I went. There we go. Where we would like be lifting from the main mark to the halfway mark to start a heel, but instead what we're going to do is we are going to lift only the needles past the target marks, because remember I said I'm only doing the lowering side of like a heel process, so I'm not doing the lifting side. So this will put me kind of in the same position I would be if I had just went through the entire lowering process. I just realized I'm actually starting on the wrong side. I need to start over here, so I caught that just in time. So probably for this you actually want to stop when your main mark's like over here at like almost 330, I guess, and then lift all the needles around these two target marks. That's where we actually want to start. That's what we want our first side to be. So obviously I won't be able to lift all of them just yet. I'm just going to lift as many as I can first. Let the machine knit the rest of the target needles and then lift all the other ones that are remaining. So as you can see, I only have the target needles in work right now. Everything else is lifted, and then I'm basically just going to do the same process I would for the lowering needles side of a heel or a toe. For like cranked socks. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is side 1 here, and then once I'm done with this side I'll show you how I get around to the other side. Oh, and don't forget, I almost did, don't forget your heel forks, people. Oh, it probably won't fit with the large weight, so let's put the medium weight back in. Medium weight. It kind of felt like the second section of yarn was knitting a little easier than the first section. I don't know why. The first section got into a massive tangle the first time I tried to use this yarn for like some heels and toes. That's why I had to like cut it off and wind it up again separately, so maybe that's why. Maybe it just wanted to cause problems. That's what its fate was, just to cause problems. Oh, that's backwards. Okay, now I can start the process, the lowering needles process. Oh my god, heel spring. There we go. Okay, so I've reached the point where I have one raised needle before both the halfway and the main mark. So, and this is the point where we kind of have to get around to the other side to have these needles in work and everything else out of work. So what we're going to do first is we are going to treat this last needle by the main mark just like the last needle on a toe. I kept saying that this process is like a heel and a toe, but really it's like a toe because I'm not going to wrap the needle that's on the other side of the mark. I'm going to leave that open for grafting together later. So we're going to go ahead and crank across those ones. Now what we have to do is we're going to lower this last needle, and then we are going to start cranking. Don't crank all the way across yet. Crank until your halfway mark is about there, and then start lowering the needles on the other side. But don't lower all the needles like you would for a sock. Only lower through the target needles. Keep these ones unused. So then keep going. And once those needles, this is where you have to be careful because it's a very small number of needles. So these ones are back in work. So now you have to raise all the other ones again. So put these ones back out of work. Come on, there we go. Now that they've knit across the target needles, and you're taking these ones newly out of work. And like I said, it's a very small section when you first get here of needles that are out of work, so you just have to be careful that you don't crank too far, because then you'll have to work on like unknitting in order to get the right needles out of work and in work, whatever. Okay, there we go. So now we're in the same spot that we were on the other side, and we're just gonna repeat the lifting of needles process. Let me go ahead and move my heel forks over to the other side now. And you might be able to see a little bit better now. These are the like somewhat eyelet, I don't know, the eyelet seam, I guess, that you get when just lowering the needles. When you're doing a heel or a toe on a sock, you don't get this tiny row of openings because when you're lowering the needles, like that is kind of like an initial wrap of the stitch, or like the stitch is knit once, and then when you're raising the needles, when you're raising the needles, you're knitting it once. And then when you're lowering the needles again, you're wrapping it again. So like there's no opening there when you're doing a heel or a toe. Just in case you're wondering, I guess. Alright, so heel forks are in place, and now I'm going to repeat the exact same process on the other side. Actually, no, I'm not. I need to wind up this last little bit of yarn, so I'm gonna do that first. Last little bit of yarn is wound up. I'll join it in once this end gets closer. So now I'm doing the process of lowering needles all over again on the other side. Alright, that's enough of that. So that's not going to give us any tension anymore. So I'm going to tuck that in there and get our last little bit. Everybody cross your fingers and toes. I think this will be enough to finish off the heel, but cross your fingers and toes nonetheless. I keep saying heel and toe. It's not a heel nor a toe, but you know what I mean. Finish up the process. I'm not going to try and weave in the ends here. I'm just going to weave them in when I'm done, because trying to wrap my head around how to weave in ends while doing a lowering needles process hurts my brain. That first one knit okay, so we should be good from here on out. Okay, so now we're at the point where I have one needle on either side again that's still raised. And you may have noticed, since we're on the opposite side of the side that you would normally be knitting heels or toes on, your halfway mark has kind of become your main mark, and your main mark has kind of become your halfway mark, so that's important to keep in mind as you're finishing up this side. So I'm lowering this last needle on the halfway marks side. There we go. And now I'm lowering the last needle on the main mark side, but it's kind of the halfway mark right now. So we're gonna crank until it's at about 9 o'clock, and then we're gonna go ahead and lower the rest of the needles. But like I said, your halfway mark is basically your main mark right now. So you're going to need to stop cranking when your halfway mark, or this side's main mark, hits the break in the yarn feeder, because this is where we are ending with our main yarn. So we're just cranking around, and there we go. The first needle after the halfway mark is now about to grab the yarn. So now, because both sides now have a lot of tension on them, for this last step, I am going to take out one heel fork, and then I'm going to move this side's heel fork, ooh, don't have enough hands, move this side's heel fork up, don't split a stitch, there we go, and put another heel fork pretty much in the same place on the other side, so that both sides have an even amount of tension for this next part. Okay, there we go. Heel forks are in place. All needles are lowered again. I just need to make sure that latches are all open, especially on the ones that I just lowered. There we go. So now you're going to take about a yard of your main yarn so that you have enough to graft the bottom seam together of your koozie, and you're going to go ahead and place it in the middle. There we go. It's a lot of yarn. Grab another weighted clip. And we're skipping the ravel cord this time because we don't need it, because we're going to graft the toe together. It's not a toe, but you know what I mean. We're going to graft the bottom together, and we're just going to go right into some scrap yarn. I hope there's enough of this color. There should be, at least for the very end here. These weighted clips are the bane of my existence sometimes. There we go. Alright, so now we're just going to crank around for a little bit with scrap yarn. Yay! You'll want to take this first round a little slow just to make sure everything is knitting. There we go, everything looks good. So let's do one more. And now we're going to want to take some stitch markers. And this is just something that's super helpful for when you are sewing the seam closed, whether it's on a koozie like this or on an actual sock. take some stitch markers and mark the last stitch bumps of your main yarn, because that'll make sure you don't miss them when you're grafting the toe together. Not a toe, but you know what I mean. Okay, now we just keep going. Alright, looks like I'm gonna get about 7 rounds out of the scrap yarn, but that should be enough. It's a good high contrast, so that should be enough to help me close up the bottom. I'm taking off my heel springs so that when the stuff falls they don't impale me, because that's a new fear I have. I scratched myself with them a couple times, but they're sharp little suckers, so yeah. It's a very valid fear. Alright, so I'm just going to keep going until scrap yarn. Woo! Dang it, I should have known that was going to happen. Come out! There we go. We'll just end it there. Put the tail in, and away we go. Alrighty. So now I'm going to take the cable cuff off. If I remember how. There we go. Cable cuff off, sock weight out. And there we have it. There's what it looks like when it's still attached to everything. I'm going to change the camera's point of view again so I can show you how to graft it closed. Alrighty, here we are on my kind of messy desktop. I'll show you how to start grafting the bottom of this sucker together. So, first things first, we're going to get the setup situation. Let me make sure I'm in frame. Yep. We're going to get the setup situation off. So we're going to turn this bad boy inside out and just use my loom tool, and I pick out the first couple stitches of the ravel cord, the green ravel cord here. There we go. And then I just find whichever end is a little longer, so it looks like this one. I try to keep some tension on the inside to keep it from just cinching up on itself. And you just try to pull it out. Of course it's being difficult today, because why should we have nice things when I'm trying to record one of these? Oh my gosh. Absolutely ridiculous. Try that again. No? Seriously? You've got to be kidding me. Alright, let's see what I can do here. Okay, I think I figured out what the issue is. I think that one stitch that didn't knit properly when I was transitioning from the scrap yarn to the main yarn with the ravel cord, I think it got split, like the nylon thread got split. So I think that's what caused the issue. So let me see if I can get this treble stitch out, and then it should act like normal. That's really disappointing. Alright, let me just cut the scrap yarn stitch too. Yep, there it is. Okay. Yep, alright. That should work better now. Whoa, it acted like it was supposed to. Okay, so I just have that little bit of fray. No. It should be okay though to use for a little while longer. So there we go. Ravel cord is out. Put that back over there. And then I turn on my desk light so I can actually see what I'm doing. So now I can just pop this off. Disentangle it. Oh, of course you have a knot too. This is why I should cut the knots off my scrap yarn, but then I'm lazy when I'm winding it on the cone. Alright, got that out. Undo the scrap yarn. There's that bit. And there's the rest. Okie dokie. Scrap yarn to probably get wound on the scrap yarn cone again. And setup thing. I'll keep that on its bonnet for now in case there's something else I want to knit on my smaller cylinders before I have the energy to make a sock bonnet again. Setup bonnet again. Okay, so I have 2 different clips here of ends that I need to weave in. So I'm just going to take care of these 2 first. Since this is koozie, it's not going on any body parts like a foot or anything, I'm just going to tie a quick knot here. And yep, that's how we're going to handle that. There we go. Easy peasy. So now on to the real stuff. So I'm not going to show you the entire process because that'll probably get boring, but I'll show you how to get started. So you're just going to find your long tail. And actually, let me show you how to take care of the short beginning tail first. So this one's super easy. You literally just put it on your needle, and then since your hung hem makes like a bit of a pocket, you just hide it in that little pocket there. And it's the easiest end you've ever woven in. I like to go around the circumference of the pocket just once, because then I don't even have to typically cut an end too. I just pull it out, stretch it out, boom, gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Alright, now we're to the long one. Enough procrastinating. So it's pretty much, what you're doing with the yarn is pretty much what you do with the yarn when, what the yarn does when you're like Kitchener-ing a hand knit sock together. So you're just like going in and out of all the stitches in every way. That didn't make any sense, so let me show you what I mean. So first, in order to close up the hole here, you just need to pick up the 2 stitches beyond where your markers are. So your first stitch is going to go through this side stitch, and your second one will go through another side stitch that's adjacent to the hole, and you'll pull that through. This is probably really hard to see on dark yarn, but I know Dean and Bean have their own sewing a sock toe closed video, and it's literally that same process, so you can go watch them do it too, because I don't have the words to fully explain what I'm doing right now. There we go. So I've gone through the stitch on this side that has a marker, and then I went back up through the first stitch that I picked up. So now I'm going through the stitch with the pink marker and back through the stitch with the purple marker. So what you're doing there, you're literally just going like that through all your stitches, and you're going through each stitch twice. So now I'm going to the stitch, the blue stitch, the main yarn stitch, just past the purple marker one. Going through that, if I can pick it up, geez. And then going back up through the pink marker stitch. And you just continue that all the way across to close up the seam. So going through the next one, and back down through the one on the bottom that you just came out through. Oh, my doubled up yarn is getting caught. I didn't even realize that. There we go. Okay. And every so often you'll want to cinch it closed. Don't make it too tight, otherwise you'll have a bit of a ridge, but tight enough where no daylight comes through. And yeah, you can just keep doing this all the way across. We're going to jump to that right now. Alright, so yeah, there's what the seam looks like from the bottom. There's what it looks like from the inside. I did pull it a little tight this time, but that's okay. And there you have it. You have a complete little can koozie. Okay, so yeah, that's really all that I have for you guys today. I now have two little can koozies. You can kind of see the difference. This is the one that's been blocked. This is the one that we just made that has not been blocked yet. It does grow a little bit and does get a little bit softer and a little easier to work with once it's been blocked. So this one will definitely get a blocking too. I'm thinking I might just send both of them to my brother for his birthday gift. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if my dad wants the other one. But yeah, that's really all that I have for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And you can subscribe to my channel if you're not already. You can turn on notifications so you know when I post things, all of that good stuff. You can also follow me over on Instagram. It's annabethkntwrthy with underscores between the words. And there you'll get kind of more daily updates of what I'm doing, knitting, cranking, life-wise. So yeah. Other than that, I might have another knitting update coming at you guys soon. I have a lot more whips than last time, if you watched that one, so keep an eye out for that. And otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!